Hello, welcome to Sustain Talks, the podcast crafted to enlighten individuals and businesses on the path to becoming more sustainable and socially responsible. I'm Sam Candy, CEO of Responsible Futures, where we support businesses through consulting and training. Today, I am delighted to be in conversation with Elly Perets. He's the CEO of Asterra. Since 2017, Asterra technology has saved over 368 billion gallons of water, 920,000 megawatts of energy, and over 235,000 metric tons of carbon. Flooding already causes £1 billion of damage every year on average, and that's just here in the UK. Which is why I was excited to speak to Elly and understand more about the work that they do and the difference they're making. Hi, Elly. How are you? Good to have you here today.
Thank you, Sam. Good to have you on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. So look, I'd love to delve into your background and Asterra's journey. Could you tell us a little bit more about maybe your personal motivations and the origins of Asterra, and how the company's endeavors intersect with environmental sustainability?
Yeah. So my name is Elly. I'm in the tech business in the Israeli ecosystem since my 20s. From the very beginning, I understood that my passion is about go-to-market, about linking the technology to the actual use, trying to solve real problems for real people. Back then, many years ago when I started, the main issue with technology, and I must say that it's even happening now, that people were talking about the technology and they were always forgetting what the technology is supposed to do and what for. In other words, what is the problem that it's supposed to solve? And is the technology way of solving the problem worth the investment of moving to that technology? And that's usually the gap between technology and market, what now is being called product market fit. And that's more or less where I am. I'm kind of an expert in product market fit, bridging the gap between technology and usage. And for many, many years, this is what I did. My background is in sales and marketing. In terms of education, I covered a lot of disciplines. I have an engineering degree, a law degree, business degree, and some background in computer science. So I'm kind of passionate about technology, science, business, people, problem solving. And I found myself doing all kinds of technology, supply chain, printing, marketing automation, touching different problems and different solutions. And one evening in New York, I met a friend from high school, and he told me about the idea of identifying underground leaks from space. And I was like looking on the table, and I was trying to measure how many drinks did we have here. And I came to the conclusion that it's not enough to come up with that crazy idea. And I asked him, what is it all about? And he told me about a person in Israel. His name is Loren. He's the founder of Asterra, that came up with an idea of using radar mounted on a satellite to look for the water in the underground. I'll speak a little bit about the technology in a second, but I don't want to go too much into the technology. And my first reaction was, listen, Michael, I don't think this is possible. I do understand science. I do understand physics. I do understand. And the second reaction was like, if it's possible, I must be part of it. If magic can happen, my job is being a wizard. And this is how the journey started. It was in 2016. I met with Loren. He told me about the science behind it. It started with him looking for water on Mars and Venus when he was a student.
Wow.
And when there is a problem, there is a solution. That's the beauty with science. You have to ask what is the problem. And the problem is, in order to look for water on Mars and Venus, you had to penetrate or one have to penetrate not only the clouds, but also very thick atmosphere and the dust and the ground, hence using a radar. So ground penetration radar was the solution. At that time, there was only one satellite with that capabilities, and we were starting to do some experiments at that time. And in 2016, we went to the market with a water leak detection solution. I'll pause here. Maybe it's a
Fascinating. Actually, I'm really interested to hear more about that and understand how the technology works in, you know, we're, as I mentioned before, the problem that we're having here with floods at the moment. So how that technology works in monitoring underground soil moisture.
I'll touch it. But before I touch it, I will just say as a background, we are in the area of a market that is called Earth observation. Satellites in general are going to different directions. There are communication satellites, there are weather satellites, there are navigation satellites, there are satellites which are actually looking outside. For example, a telescope that looks to the space is a Earth observation are all the tools that actually look on Earth from space. And looking on Earth, I'm using the verb look because we are human and we are limited with our eyes. Looking is usually within the visual bandwidth, the visual spectrum, which is infrared to ultraviolet. When we are looking on the overall spectrum, and now I'm moving into the science a little bit, we are talking about a fraction of the spectrum. It's less than 1% of the spectrum. So when we say look, it means that we try to understand reality through a very narrow window. Reality is so much more than what we can see with our eyes. We can see only from red to ultraviolet or violet in general. What about all the other bands? What about all the other frequencies around us? What does it tell us? So radar is about 15% of the spectrum. And if one can take the data collected from radar, either if it's passive or active, we can only imagine what it can tell us about what is happening. The area of Earth observation is probably the most critical point when it comes to helping Earth to recover from what we are doing to it. For a very simple reason. As I said earlier, the humanity or people are very limited. We are limited with our brain, and we are limited with the tools that we collect information, for example, eyes. Hence, we don't really understand what is it that we are doing to Earth, and we don't really understand the impact on Earth of our doing. Collecting data from satellites can help by taking huge amount of data and provide us some idea of what is happening on Earth. Because the alternative is continue to use our eyes or sensors on the ground, which, as I said earlier, are very limited. So that's the beauty of Earth observation, taking huge amount of data over multiple bandwidth, visual, radar, and others, combine them together and try to understand what is happening. Going back specifically to what we are doing, we are using radar to identify specific targets on Earth. And because radar is sensitive to the electromagnetic return, specifically it's the dielectric constant of a material. So, but it's the behavior, the electromagnetic behavior of an object. We can, through algorithms and machine learning and AI and all kinds of other remote sensing techniques, differentiate between the phenomena. Specifically, we are looking for soil moisture. We're looking for water in the ground. I think that everyone that has any technology background understands that water is screaming in terms of electromagnetic return. We know that you can run electricity through water. And with the right algorithm, we can even differentiate between the type of water. From the radar point of view, there are several bandwidth. We are using a very long one. It's called L band. It's 1.3 gigahertz. And because it's long enough, it can penetrate the canopies and it can penetrate the ground up to a certain level. So combining the idea that we can penetrate the ground up to a certain level and hit a material that tells us I'm here because I have some electromagnetic behavior, the combination of the two with, as I said earlier, huge amount of other remote sensing techniques, data science, and so on, we can identify moisture in the ground. And if it close, for example, to a pipe, and if we can identify the fact that those are treated water versus not treated water, it's very likely a leak. So one of the applications that we are providing to the market, we are providing water utilities with data that helps them to identify the leaks under the ground before it bursts.
Wow, that I mean, if you've seen the news in the UK and the issues with the water utilities companies and the leaks that they have at the moment, obviously that's going to be a phenomenal opportunity for those organisations.
It's an amazing opportunity, specifically about the UK. There are, and you are in London, so you probably work with Yorkshire, with the Thames Water.
Yeah.
Of you, there is Yorkshire Water, Affinity Water, some of the largest water utilities in the world. They are responsible for any number from like 10,000 kilometers, some of them are running 35,000 kilometers of pipes. It's a huge network. They are responsible to bring high quality, high pressure, 24/7 water to all of us. Huge responsibility.
Yeah.
They are using an infrastructure that is aging faster than anyone's ability to replace it in the right space. So we are talking about an infrastructure that was more or less installed originally after the Second World War. The aging, the best pipe can go well for maybe 40 or 50 years, and it depends on the soil corrosivity or soil structure around it. And the utility with the highest capacity of replacement can only replace between 0.5% to 1.5% of the system a year. So by definition, the system is aging faster than our ability to replace it. And the only way to mitigate those this aging process that obviously end up with lots of water, it's called in the plumbing world, it's called non-revenue water, NRW, water that cannot be sold to the customer because we lose it in the distribution system before it hits the target. And we are talking about any number between 20 to 40% of the water. It's crazy.
That's crazy.
We are pumping this water, treating this water. Sometimes we desalinate this water. We push it through the system. All of it is happening with energy. The 1840 bar, the pressure in the pumps, is all about electricity. And we are losing all of this water because the infrastructure is aging just next to the point of consumption. Most of the leaks would be in your street, under the pavement.
Yeah, that is crazy. And to me, I knew what was going to happen with this conversation. I was going to be so fascinated that it was going to go off in all directions. First of all, to be honest, before this conversation, I didn't really understand how being in space was going to help with the environment, because I know billions is spent into going into space, and just having this conversation and learning more about how that technology reads what's going on in the earth. The other part is, wow, what have you seen since 2016 to now in terms of how the earth has changed? Because I know so many people don't, maybe a bit skeptical about what is happening with the climate crisis. And I guess you have a much closer vision to that. Can I ask you about that?
Maybe I'll touch on that for a second. Commercially, we had at the beginning, we had two issues. Issue number one was trust with the technology. People reacted the same way I reacted the first time I heard it. Can't be. So that was the first thing. But the second thing is that people didn't care. Water is cheap. And if we have leaks, let's push more water into the system. And I'm talking about 2016 and 2017. Now it's changing. It's changing fast. I'm happy to say that it's changing. If you're taking, for example, Ofwat in the UK or EPA in the US, those are the regulators that the water utilities report to. It's not enough anymore to report the water lost. There are goals and targets in non-revenue water that they need to achieve. And if they don't achieve it, they pay huge amount of money as a fine. Some of the water utilities in the UK are private, so they don't want to pay that fine. So this is one aspect of it. The other aspect is the damages. When something bursts and and the water goes into a business or into a house, that's a damage. Now, all the big leaks starts as a tiny leak at the beginning. So the name of the game is to identify the leaks when they are small before it bursts, because we are helping in two things. Number one, a small leak that leaks for a long period is a huge amount of water loss. So it's better to even let's say 3 liters a minute, which is relatively a small leak. You can only imagine what happens on year 4 or 5 in 3 minutes, or 3 liters a minute. It's a huge amount of water that disappears. I mean, it's better to have like a burst for a day and fix it over a main pipe than letting a service pipe leak at that amount for so long. 3 liters a minute will never surface, so it will take years to surface. In the professional market or in the plumbing market, it's called background leaks. Leaks that cannot be found in the current way of using leak detection methods, and this is where we come to play. We work with water utilities to understand that the problem is not necessarily the burst, that when it happened, the mayor and the press come over to take a big picture. There are thousands of little leaks all over the system, next to the meter, next to the connection in the service pipe and so on. Those are the leaks that we must fight in order to reduce non-revenue water.
Yeah. So you must be finding, you know, just going from the news in here in the UK, you must be finding thousands and thousands of leaks every day.
About 3 months ago, we hit 100,000 leaks since we started. There is no other system in the world. You can only imagine the amount of water that we are saving. And when we find a leak, it's not just the leak that we find, it's also all the water that could go through that leak over the years if it wouldn't have been found.
Yeah.
So now, maybe I'll use the opportunity also to talk about water in general and what else we can do with our technology, because it's not only water leaks. You started by talking about flooding and other events. Look, water is almost with anything that comes to the ground, human intervention with the ground has some type of a water aspect to it. So let's talk for a second about the transportation infrastructure. What happened when we build a transportation infrastructure? What is it that we do to the natural drainage system when we take a road and we just put it, like the M35, we put it from the south all the way to the north, and we let cars, what happened to the environment, what happened to the natural drainage, what happens to the animals, what happened to the vegetation? Yeah? And once we are interfering the drainage, the natural drainage system, all kinds of negative effects start to happen. Starting with landslides, ground movement, potholes, sinkholes, Some of them starts immediately, some of them it takes years and years and years until it shows. So identifying the water around the water and the soil moisture movement around the infrastructure is critical for network rail or for national highways or for municipalities to better manage I will call it maybe the resiliency of the infrastructure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think, you know, this is why I was so curious to learn more about what you do, because I think like in 3 months' time we're going to be talking about drought. So where is that water going, and what can be done also to capture it? And that I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, my last podcast, about where all that water is then going and how we're looking after it and not having to face first floods and then drought.
Yeah, and we have to understand the consequence of what we are doing. If we are taking the country, the UK, for example, theoretically, there is a constant supply of water, rainwater, all over the country. So theoretically, there is no shortage in water. The issue is capturing that water, treating that water, and pushing it through the infrastructure to the consumers. That's very, very costly. So having endless amount of water coming on with rain doesn't necessarily solve the problem. We still need to find a way to not losing it when we bring it to the people, and it costs a lot of energy and a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we cannot just say we have endless amount of resources. Yes, we do. First, it's in short in many, many territories, south of Italy, south of France, Spain, the Middle East, where I am, South Africa. So there is not enough water. Second, even when there is enough water, like in the UK or even Thailand, we are in Bangkok for like 5 years now. And you would think why Bangkok would need a leakage system. They have a huge amount of data. Capturing the water and put it through the pipe is very costly. And losing that water because it's broken doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Just switching a little bit here, sustainability is got to be at the core of Asterra's mission. How does your company approach sustainability beyond the direct impact of your technology? Are there any specific initiatives or practices within your organization?
So this is where we are starting to look on, and for those of your viewers that needs help, maybe you can take the time and explain what's the difference between SDG and ESG. And now I'm going to get into more of like a professional terms, but I'll try to make it simple.
Yes, please.
When we're looking on measuring our impact, okay, we are using SDG, the sustainability goals of the UN.
Yeah.
And that's a mechanism that helps to take an idea and translate it into a measurable impact. For example, how much water did you save? So we have a very clear model between a leak that we find, the size of the leak and the amount of water that we are saving, okay? And then we link it to energy because we know what's the amount of energy that we need to use in order to push it through the system. And so it's a very methodological idea on how we are using it, okay? Or we can take the transportation model or mining model. What happened when a tailing dam collapsed? If we can prevent it, what does it mean in terms of SDG? And that's where the UN goals helping us to build a model that we can measure, track, and report.
Yeah.
So that's SDG. When it comes to ESG, there are more softened area to measure here, which is more in the area of, for example, what is our impact on the society? What is our impact on the communities that we work with? And in that area, we're trying to connect our activities in different ideas. For example, when someone is taking my map in Italy right now. Someone is taking Asterra map in Italy, looking for leaks. For every leak that they verify from the Asterra map, automatically Asterra contribute €2 back to the community. And because our partner in Italy has very sensitive approach to kids on the spectrum, that money goes to those type of organizations. So we link it by saying, first, we are trying to save water. Our customers are becoming our partners, not only by using our technology, but also by being encouraged to find more leaks. Because once they find the leak, they get €2 from Asterra that is being contributed through our partner to the education and help organizations that help kids on the spectrum. So this is how we close the loop between SDG and ESG, and how we can take a measurable amount. We save water, but for every gallon of water or liter of water that you save, you also help to your own community in your own territory. And we're doing all kinds of things all around the world with our customers and partners.
That's so beautiful, and that connects. I always talk about the holistic approach to the E and the S, the environment and the social, and that's such a beautiful way to connect it. And I think, certainly I know with the government frameworks here and a lot of the construction companies here in the UK, they have to be able to show the S as much as the E to be able to even tender for those contracts. So those kind of partnerships and understanding exactly how that works is beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. You operate in various countries around the world. Can you explain, have you encountered any unique challenges or opportunities in implementing your technology in different regions?
Yeah, so from technology point of view, one of the things that is really, really unique about the way we are implementing our technology is that we are creating a global solution. So it's the same algorithm for highways and roads, if it's in China or if it's in Nevada. Yes, there are differences in the weather and there are differences in some other areas, but when it comes to the core algorithm, it would be the same. We have the same leak detection product all over the world. We have the same tailing dams solution all over the world. It's all around soil moisture. It's all around standardizing the signal that we are taking from multiple satellites into one delivery model. We call it EO Discover, which basically it's a SaaS environment where we are delivering our data to our customers. So from technology point of view, there is no problem other than localization, like making sure that people can read and use the data in their own language. The differences starts with different business models and of course cultures. Different business models can start from a very simple thing, like what is the business or the market structure. In the UK, there are 32 water utilities and the majority of the water is going for 17, okay? So it's very easy to approach the majority of the market. It's a measurable amount, list of people, you can find them in different areas. There is no issue in initial marketing into the UK market, and I would say even to the Italian market and others. But if we are going to places like the US where there are 56,000 water utilities, or large amount in Germany, or now we are talking about completely different markets. So we need to adapt our go-to-market not only to the problem itself, but also to the way to approach the end user. So that's one thing. The other thing is the cultural and emotional behavior to water. So if I'm taking even the same country, let's talk about the US, if we will take anyone from the Colorado to the West compared to anyone in the Northeast, They look at water completely different. They just look at the water bill and they know what's the difference. One would pay 5 times more than the other, so they have a different emotional approach to what water is and how important it is. In China, it's a huge country. The south is very dry, the north is very wet. So the regulator has a major part of it. How the regulator looks on it, of what? EPA, other regulators, the environmental protection in China, where we are very active. What is the ratio between public utilities, private utilities, and municipalities? For example, Sam, I hope I'm not touching on any one pain area. Municipalities with water department are the least attractive customers for me because the mayor doesn't care. The mayor is not being elected on the water. The mayor is being elected on education, garbage collection, and others. In fact, he will take the water bills, or he has a motivation to take the money that comes from the water bills and use it for other reasons. So if we're talking about public water utilities, which are separate from the municipalities, now we're talking about a different thinking, because the money that comes from the water bills come back into the water infrastructure. And that's a different thinking. And if we are using, if we'll go one step further, which will be, for example, a private water utility like Suez, Veolia, Aqua America, and so on, this is a business. For them, every liter or every gallon is a dollar or a cent. So it's very easy to build for them an ROI. They don't get it for free from the government. So the diversity of approaches is not only by territory. It can be within the same territory, but different business, and we need to approach it from different angles.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much to think about, especially when you look at it on a global scale. But I'm also interested what drives you personally in your commitment to sustainability and innovation.
Sam, it's very, very simple. Me personally, I'm kind of a dinosaur from the old tech ideas where we were thinking about building new product, take it to the market, finding a market, and so on. And I did it again and again for all my mature life in different markets, in different areas. And I must say that many, many times I felt that I'm pushing products that nobody needs to people that pay a lot of money and they're not going to use it, or maybe they will use part of it. And that's the deal in the technology sector when it comes to sales and marketing. And for many years, that was my feeling. Okay. And then I'm touching humanity as a whole. With Asterra right now, it's like whatever I'm doing is let's go for technology in general for a second. There are between 8 to 9 billion people on Earth. How many of them really have access to technology? Between maybe half or less than half. So by definition, if we're coming with a good idea of a technological system, it will usually go to less than half of humanity that actually has access to technology. Okay, so if we are doing something in mobility, we need people with cars. If we are doing something with communication, we need people with cellular phones, and so on and so forth. And if we are building a management system, it will go to businesses. So how many people will you really touch through what is called technology? Now I'm with a company that run a technology that touch each and every person on Earth. I've never been in such situation. I have direct impact on each and every person on Earth, theoretically. And I'm selling something which is real, that solves problems. My customers are not people that go to an office and touch a keyboard. My customers get into a truck in the morning, they wear yellow jacket and they wear boots, and they go to deal with the ground to solve problems that matter to each and every one of us. So waking up in the morning with that kind of mission in our mind is much different than what I used to do before. And I can say that this is like an infection for all of us, not only the Asterra employees, all our partners, the ecosystem, anyone that touches us,
Yeah.
they are getting infected with that passion.
It feels good, doesn't it? I made the
Absolutely.
change 3 years ago. You know, I always worked in very large corporates, and I got to the age of 50 and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I have to have some kind of purpose for the rest of my career. So I smile because I know that feeling when you're doing something that actually feels good.
Yeah.
And you touched on something else as well, you know, that the amount of people around the world that don't have access to water, you know, so we're talking about people that really do, that probably have too much, and the flooding, but actually there's still a massive issue with
You're
people
correct.
in the world that don't have access. It's such a shame that we can't just take that water and pipe it through to the areas that are struggling. Do you see that in the
That's
future?
unfortunately a problem that we cannot solve without technology, but you are absolutely correct. There are still people that need to walk quite of a distance,
Yeah.
and those are not marginal amount of people. This is not the age of humanity. This is a large number. It's measured in billions of people that needs to walk to the closest water resource and use water, and those resources are getting smaller and shorter and disappearing over time.
Mm. Yeah, it's a very sad and unfair world that we live in. And you know, I'm sure the work that you are doing from listening to you is doing the greater good, and certainly that bit that you mentioned about giving back. Look, we're getting to the end. I could speak to you. I have many more questions, but you know, we have a set amount of time. So I just wanted two more questions. One, for individuals or organizations that are interested in incorporating sustainable practices or technologies like Asterra into their operations. What advice would you offer? What steps can they take?
Yeah, I would look on the actual problem that they are trying to solve and identify it in a measurable way. Ask yourself, what is the problem and can I measure it? Okay? And then start to walk back into how I'm going to solve it. Our customers, ground engineers, water engineers, hydraulic engineers, they are not remote sensing scientists. They never knew that satellites can help them. They never came to the conclusion that if they need a solution for their problems, they need to look to space. They were looking closer. They were looking on what is around them. And it takes people with larger or holistic idea to come up with a solution. So we cannot expect them to find a way. We need to come to them with a solution. Now, incorporating something like our solution in a system, technologically talking, the easiest thing ever. It's all based on standard geographical information system, GIS, maps. It's the easiest things ever. The difficult part is the adoption. The market consists of mainly traditional government, and if not government-like type of behavior. The change is slow, the adoption is even slower, and taking risk is not exactly the lingo that they're using. So that's where the challenge in adoption or incorporating technology is going to be.
Thank you. Thank you. My final question is just what I always ask: what is next? What's coming up? Do you have any a glimpse into what we might expect from Asterra in the future?
It goes all the way from doing what we're doing in agriculture, in flood monitoring, in maritime, in forestry. There are so many things that we can do with our technology. And we just need to go through the process of doing the research, picking the right segment, and building a solution around it. And that's the future. There is no limit to what can be done with data from Earth observation sources, as long as we understand that the data, the raw data, is not enough. The analytic and the solution to a real problem is where we need help with. Bridging the gap between the raw material, the raw data, to the problem that we solve. Who do we solve it for, and what do we gain by solving it?
Amazing. I honestly, I've loved this conversation. I've
Thank you.
learned so much in this conversation, so much that I didn't understand, didn't know about, and I really appreciate it. And this is why I do this podcast. I once had a conversation with someone and I was like, oh, I wish I could tell everyone about this, and this is what it's there for.
That's the idea behind podcast.
Thank you so.
By the way, we did a good job with the questions.
Oh, good.
I think that we touched most of them.
I just try to simplify it as much as possible so people can understand and make a difference. So thank you for your time, and have a very, very good rest of your day.
Thank you so much.